All right, let's jump right into this explainer and crack one of the greatest cold cases in the history of philosophy. René Descartes and the mystery of human consciousness. For centuries, thinkers have wrestled with exactly what the mind is and how it actually relates to the physical world around us. So today, we're going to look really closely at Descartes' revolutionary theory, substance dualism. We'll explore the exact origins of his famous distinction between the mind and the body, and look at the massive repercussions it had for both metaphysics and the philosophy of mind.
Here is our roadmap for how we're going to break this down. First up, we'll examine Descartes' method of radical doubt. Then we'll look at his foundational discovery, I am a thinking thing. Third, we're going to explore the actual formal splitting of mind and body. Fourth, we'll tackle the massive problem of interaction that this created. And finally, we'll review the enduring legacy of his dualism.
So I want you to ask yourself right now, are you just a biological machine, or is there some immaterial ghost operating the controls? This isn't just a fun late-night thought experiment. It's literally the core of the mind-body problem. Humans obviously have physical properties, right? Size, weight, shape. But we also have mental properties, perceptual experience, beliefs, selfhood. Figuring out exactly how these two seemingly entirely different sets of properties coexist is the exact puzzle Descartes set out to solve.
Which brings us to Section 1, the method of radical doubt and stripping away those illusions.
Now, before we get too deep, we need to clarify what Descartes actually means by substance. He's not using it to mean a physical, chemical, or a liquid. He means a self-sustaining entity in its own right. Prior to Descartes, the old Aristotelian view basically saw bodies as combinations of fundamental elements, fire, air, water, earth. Descartes completely tossed that heritage out the window. He shifted the focus to the specific definition you see here. A substance is something capable of existing entirely independently. So, aside from God, who is the only infinite substance, Descartes recognized created substances, meaning things that can exist by themselves, without depending on any other created things.
So, acting almost like a metaphysical detective, Descartes employed this incredibly rigorous, step-by-step epistemological method in his meditations. First, he doubted his senses entirely. Why? Because, as he noted, experience shows they can be super unreliable. I mean, you could literally be dreaming right now. Second, he conceptually stripped away the entire physical world, supposing that arms, legs, and the whole physical universe might just be a powerful delusion. But even in the face of this extreme, radical doubt, he hit bedrock. He discovered that the very act of doubting actually requires a doubter. And that brings us to this incredible quote from the Meditations. He writes, "I can doubt whether I have a body, and indeed whether any bodies exist at all, but it is not possible for me to doubt that I am, or exist, as long as I am doubting or thinking." It's just brilliant. The very act of doubting confirms the existence of his mind. Even if he stubbornly insists that absolutely no bodies exist, the realization remains. He is something. The knowledge of this me doesn't depend on anything physical whatsoever. If you're doubting, you're thinking. And if you're thinking, you exist.
This profound realization launches us into Section 2, I am a thinking thing, discovering the mind.
Let's follow his logic here. He says, I therefore who doubt and think am not a body. Otherwise, in doubting the existence of bodies, I would be doubting that of myself. Because he can doubt his physical body but cannot doubt his mind, they absolutely must be fundamentally different things. This is a massive leap in his logic. He realizes that he can clearly and distinctly understand his mind as a subsistent thing without ascribing any bodily properties to it at all. He knows his existence purely from thought, so he concludes he knows himself purely as a thinking thing.
So the crucial takeaway is that Descartes completely rejects the old physics. He boils all of existence down to two mutually exclusive attributes, thinking and taking up space. The whole nature of a mind is just to think. It's an existing finite substance, and thought is its principal attribute. Conversely, the nature of a body is simply pure extension in space, length, breadth, and depth. To Descartes, there is absolutely zero overlap. There is nothing in common between thought and physical extension.
And now we arrive at the very heart of Cartesian dualism in Section 3, splitting mind and body into two distinct realms.
Notice just how stark this contrast really is. As Descartes points out, the body, by its very nature, is endlessly divisible. If a foot or an arm gets cut off, a piece of the body is removed. It's highly corruptible. But the mind, it's completely indivisible. You cannot even conceive of half a mind. When Descartes considers his own mind, he can't distinguish any parts in himself. He's a thing that is entirely one and complete. This stark contrast,
endless divisibility versus total indivisibility, suffices to show him that the mind is altogether distinct from the body.
But wait, there's a catch, and it's a big one. This highlights a wild paradox. While the mind and body are utterly distinct substances on paper, our everyday experience proves they are intimately intertwined. He writes, "Nature likewise teaches me that I am not present in my body only as a pilot is present in a ship, but that I am very closely conjoined to it and, so to speak, fused with it." Think about it. If we were just a mind hovering in a body like a pilot steering a ship, we wouldn't actually feel pain when the body was injured. We just perceive the damage intellectually, right? Like a pilot seeing a broken mast. But instead, we have these deeply confused feelings of hunger, thirst, and pain, and those arise precisely from this mysterious union and fusion of the mind with the physical body.
That mysterious fusion created a massive headache, bringing us to Section 4, the problem of interaction and the causal gap.
Because guys, this is the million-dollar question. If minds aren't physically extended, they don't have physical surfaces. And if they lack physical surfaces, there's basically no way in principle for physical bodies to bump into them or come into contact with them. So how on earth did they causally interact? Critics like Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia totally pressed him on this exact flaw. How can a completely immaterial ghost literally push the buttons of a physical machine? And conversely, how does a physical wound translate into an immaterial feeling of pain?
Descartes kind of hand-waved this issue away by pointing to a specific brain region. He observed that the mind isn't immediately affected by all parts of the body, but only by the brain, specifically a very small part where the common sense resides. He claimed that motions in the nerves transmit to this tiny part of the brain, which then presents an idea to the mind. But let's be real. From a strict physics standpoint, this explanation didn't actually solve the fundamental mechanics of how the immaterial touches the material. It didn't really satisfy anyone.
Because he couldn't cleanly solve that gap, his successors had to get creative. Section 5, the legacy of dualism and the alternative solutions.
Philosophers basically bent over backward to fix Descartes' interaction gap. You've got Malebranche pushing occasionalism, where he argued that your foot hitting a stone doesn't actually cause pain in your mind, rather God established laws to just sync those two events up. Then Leibniz suggested pre-established harmony, arguing God set up the mind and body at the dawn of time like two perfectly synchronized clocks that run in parallel but never actually touch. And then Spinoza went a totally different route with a radical monism, arguing that mind and body aren't two separate substances at all, but just two different attributes of one single infinite substance.
And this debate is still alive and well. Jump forward to 1949, and philosopher Gilbert Ryle heavily criticized this whole Cartesian view, famously mocking it as the ghost in the machine. Ryle argued that viewing the mind as this queer, elusive, non-physical thing hiding inside a mechanical body was just absurd. Yet, despite all the mockery and the criticism, Cartesian dualism remains highly intuitive. The idea that the real you is somehow separate from your wet physical brain is a default view that a huge chunk of humanity still naturally holds today. Science and philosophy are literally still struggling to explain how mere physical matter can produce conscious feeling.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder about your own existence. If Descartes was completely wrong and there is no separate immaterial substance, what exactly is the conscious self that is comprehending this explainer right now? How does purely physical matter wake up and start thinking? It's a question Descartes put on the map over 300 years ago, and honestly, it's one we are still desperately trying to solve today.